A letter sitting on my kitchen table right now. I've read it so many times, the paper has gone soft at the fold lines. My daughter thinks I threw it away. She thinks a lot of things that aren't true. But for you to understand why that letter matters, I need to go back to the beginning. I need to tell you about the Tuesday morning my daughter walked into my house and told me I was no longer capable of making my own decisions. My name is Ruth. I'm 67 years old. I live in a two-bedroom house in Asheville, North Carolina. The same house my husband Owen and I bought in 1989 when the neighborhood was still half-empty lots and gravel driveways. We planted a magnolia tree in the front yard the first spring we moved in. It's taller than the roofline now. Owen passed away 14 months before any of this happened. Pancreatic cancer. From diagnosis to the end was 11 weeks. I don't say that to make you feel sorry for me. I say it because you need to know that when my daughter started showing up more often, started calling every day, started suggesting things, I thought she was doing it out of love. I thought she was worried about me. I let my guard down because grief does that to you. It makes you trust people you shouldn't trust quite so completely. My daughter's name is Renee. She's 41. She works in pharmaceutical sales and she's very good at it. I say that not as a compliment, but as a warning. She knows how to frame things. She knows how to make a suggestion sound like concern, and a demand sound like a question, and a takeover sound like help. Her husband's name is Craig. He coaches high school football. He doesn't say much when Renee is in the room. He doesn't have to. For the first few months after Owen died, I was barely functional. I won't pretend otherwise. I stopped cooking real meals. I forgot to pay the electric bill twice. I sat in Owen's recliner most evenings and watched whatever was on television without actually watching it. Renee called every day during that period, and I was grateful. She lived 40 minutes away in Weaverville, and she came by on weekends and brought groceries sometimes. It felt like what family is supposed to be. Then I started getting better. That's when things changed. I've always been a woman who does things. Before I retired, I was an office manager for a dental practice for 22 years. I kept schedules and budgets and personnel files and insurance claims for a staff of 14. I was not someone who needed managing. But grief had made me small for a while, and I think Renee got used to that version of me. I think she preferred it. When I started making my own grocery runs again, she called it a phase. When I joined a watercolor class at the rec center, she said she was worried I was overextending myself. When I told her I was thinking about redoing the back deck, she drove over unannounced and spent 2 hours explaining why I should wait, why the timing wasn't right, why she and Craig could just come do it on a weekend sometime. Sometime? That's always the word people use when they don't intend to do something. The thing that started it all was the financial power of attorney. It was a Saturday morning in March. Renee and Craig arrived at 9, which was early. She had a folder. She always has a folder when she wants something. She sat down at my kitchen table, opened it, and slid a document across to me. "Mom," she said, "Craig and I have been talking, and we really think it's time to get this set up. It's just for protection. It's so that if something ever happened to you, we could step in right away without everything getting tied up in probate." I looked at the document. I'd seen enough paperwork in my career to know what I was looking at. It was a durable financial power of attorney. If I signed it, Renee would have full authority over my bank accounts, my investments, my property. All of it. "Nothing's happened to me," I said. "I know, Mom, that's the point. We want to do this before something does." Craig was nodding. He does that a lot. Nodding, like a man watching a play he's already seen. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "We had it drawn up," she said. "A friend of Craig's is an attorney. He said this is really standard for parents your age." Parents? My age? I was 66 at the time. I didn't sign it that day. I told her I wanted to read it over. She smiled the smile she uses when she's being patient with someone she thinks is being slow, and she said, "Of course, take your time." She left the folder on the table when she left. That evening I read every word. Then I called my friend Harriet, who had gone through something similar with her own family 3 years earlier. Harriet listened quietly, and then she said, "Ruth, please do not sign that document." I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about what Owen would have said. Owen was a measured man, slow to judge, but he had never particularly warmed to Craig. He used to say Craig smiled too fast. I thought about that. The following week, I made an appointment with my own attorney, not Craig's friend. Mine. Her name is Joanna, and she's handled my family's affairs for over 15 years. I sat across from her desk and I slid the document across to her the same way Renee had slid it to me. Joanna read it. She set it down. She folded her hands. "Ruth," she said, "this is broadly written. Broader than it needs to be for the purpose your daughter described." She paused. If you signed this, she would have immediate and essentially unrestricted access to everything you own. There are no triggers, no conditions. She wouldn't need to wait for anything to happen to you. I sat with that for a moment. What would you recommend? I asked. Joanna told me. We talked for an hour and 15 minutes. I took notes on the yellow legal pad, the same kind I'd used for 22 years at the dental practice. When I left her office, I felt the way you feel after a fever breaks. Clearer. A little weak, but clearer. I did not tell Renee about that appointment. Over the next several weeks, she brought up the document twice more. Each time I changed the subject. Each time she smiled, that patient smile. I could feel her getting ready to push harder. I knew my daughter. I knew her timelines. On a Wednesday evening in late April, she called and said she and Craig were thinking of coming down for the weekend. Was that okay? I said of course. She said great, they'd arrive Saturday morning. She said, and I remember exactly how she phrased it, I think it'll be good for us to sit down and get some things sorted out. I knew what things. On Friday, I called Joanna and told her the timeline had moved up. She said everything on her end was already prepared. I thanked her. Then I went to the small fireproof safe in the back of my bedroom closet, the one Owen had bought years ago for our passports and the house deed, and I placed inside it a sealed envelope. On the front, in my handwriting, I wrote Renee's name. Saturday morning, they arrived at 10. Renee had the folder again. New papers, I noticed. Different document, similar intent. This one, she explained, was simpler. Just the financial accounts. Just a co-signatory arrangement, just so she could help. You've seemed overwhelmed lately, she told me. Have I? I said. Mom, you forgot your dentist appointment last month. I rescheduled it, I said. That's not forgetting, that's rescheduling. Craig smiled. Fast, like Owen said. We went back and forth for a while. Renee was calm and practiced and relentless in the way that a river is relentless. Not violent, just persistent, wearing away at whatever is in front of it. She talked about how Owen would have wanted this. She talked about how hard it was to worry about me from 40 minutes away. She talked about the neighbor 2 streets over who'd had a fall and nobody found her for 2 days. And then she said the thing that changed everything between us. Mom, I've actually been in contact with a financial advisor, just to look at your situation. I hope that's okay. He had some concerns. I set down my coffee cup. You contacted someone about my finances, I said. Without asking me. I have access to the joint account from when Dad was sick. I just wanted to make sure. That account was for Owen's medical expenses, I said. And it was closed when the estate settled. There was a pause. I just think, she said, that at this stage of life you need someone looking out for you. I have someone looking out for me, I said. Me. She looked at Craig. He looked at the table. Then she tried a different approach. She suggested that maybe I should think about downsizing. The house was too big for one person, wasn't it? The yard was a lot to maintain. There were some very lovely senior communities outside of Asheville. She'd done some research, very active communities, lots of amenities. She could set up some tours if I wanted. I let her talk. I had learned over the past several weeks that letting Renee talk was sometimes the most useful thing I could do. She revealed things when she talked. When she wound down, I stood up and I said, "There's something I'd like to show you." I walked to the bedroom. I heard them exchange a few quiet words behind me. I came back with the fireproof safe. I set it on the kitchen table. I entered the combination. I took out the sealed envelope with Renee's name on the front and I slid it across the table to her. She looked at it. She looked at me. "Open it," I said. She picked it up and opened it. She read. I watched her face change the way weather changes over the mountains, fast and complete. Inside the envelope was a letter from Joanna on her firm's letterhead. It stated that I had met with her and made several changes to my estate plan. It stated that I had established a revocable living trust, that my assets had been transferred into that trust, and that I had named a professional corporate trustee to manage the trust assets, not Renee. It stated that I had revised my will, that the house and the bulk of the estate would, upon my death, be divided between 2 charities, the local Humane Society chapter where Owen and I had volunteered for years, and a non-profit that provides in-home care for low-income seniors so they don't have to leave their homes. It stated that a specific bequest had been made for Renee, a meaningful amount, but not what she'd been planning on. And it stated that I had consulted with an elder law specialist and filed paperwork designating Harriet, my friend of 30 years, as my healthcare proxy and my agent under a carefully conditioned power of attorney that could only be activated by 2 independent physicians confirming incapacity. The letter also noted that I had spoken with the bank and added a security flag to all my accounts requiring in-branch identity verification for any changes. Renee read it twice. I could tell because her eyes went back to the top. Then she put it down. "Mom," she said. Her voice was different now. Smaller. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" "I tried," I said. "You came to my house with documents 3 times. I was trying to help. You contacted a financial advisor about my money without my permission," I said. "That's not help. I don't know what to call it, but it isn't help." Craig pushed back his chair and said he was going to get some air. The back door closed behind him. Renee looked at me for a long time. Her eyes were wet. I felt something pull in my chest, the way it always does when one of your children cries, even when you know the tears aren't entirely about what they say they're about. "I'm not senile," I said, more quietly. "I'm not confused. I'm not incapable. I'm a 67-year-old woman who just lost her husband, and I was sad for a while. That's allowed. That doesn't mean I need someone to manage me." "I know that," she said, but she said it like someone who was only just learning it. "The power of attorney you brought me," I said, "would have given you access to everything I own, right now, today, while I'm sitting here completely healthy and of sound mind. Do you understand how that felt? To have my daughter walk into my home with that?" She didn't answer. "I need you to understand something," I said. "This house belonged to your father and me. We paid for it together. We built our life here together. What happens to it when I'm gone is my decision, and I've made that decision. That is final." The afternoon was quiet after that. Renee cried more properly this time, not the tidy strategic tears from before. We talked for a long time. I told her I loved her. I told her I understood that in her mind she thought she was protecting me and that maybe some part of that was real and I was willing to believe the better version of what she'd intended. But I also told her that love doesn't require a signature. It doesn't need a legal document. And if she needed me to be helpless in order to feel close to me, that was something she would have to work through on her own. She and Craig left in the late afternoon. The Magnolia was catching the last light when I stood on the porch and watched their car go down the driveway. I went inside. I washed the coffee cups. I sat in Owen's recliner for a little while, not because I was sad, but because I still like being near the things he touched. Then I called Harriet and told her how it went. She laughed at the part about Craig going outside for air. She said that was the most Craig thing she'd ever heard. We talked for over an hour. The following Monday I signed up for a 6-day painting workshop in Taos, New Mexico. I had always wanted to go to New Mexico. Owen had always said we'd get there eventually. Eventually ran out before we made it, and I spent a long time being sorry about that. I'm not sorry anymore. I'm going. I booked a room at a small inn near the plaza. I ordered new brushes online that arrived in a flat box, and I lined them up on the kitchen counter, looked at them for a few minutes because they were beautiful and because they were mine. Renee texted me 2 weeks later. She said she'd been thinking. She said she wanted to understand things better. She asked if we could have lunch sometime. I said yes. We haven't had the lunch yet, but I think we will. I think she's trying, in the slow, careful way that people try when they've been caught doing something they can't fully defend. I'm not in a rush. I have time now. I've decided to be very deliberate about how I spend it. The letter is still on the kitchen table. I keep it there to remind myself of something. Not to remind myself to be suspicious of Renee, or to be angry, or to stay guarded. I keep it there to remind myself what it felt like to sit across from my own attorney and hear her say, "You are right to protect yourself. You have every right to protect yourself. 67 isn't waiting to die. 67 is a Tuesday morning with good coffee and new paintbrushes and a plane ticket to New Mexico sitting in your email inbox. 67 is knowing your own name on a document, knowing what it means, and deciding for yourself whether to sign it. I didn't sign theirs. I signed my own. And that made all the difference. I thought a lot about what I would have lost if I had signed that document. Not just the house. Not just the accounts. I would have lost the version of myself that Owen married. The woman who managed 14 people and never once let a deadline slip. The woman who knew what she was signing before she picked up the pen. I came close to letting grief talk me out of being that person, and grief almost won for a while. That's the part nobody warns you about. It's not the obvious attacks you have to watch for. It's the quiet ones. The ones that come with a folder and a concerned expression and the word just in front of everything. Just a signature. Just for protection. Just to make things easier. Nothing that starts with just is ever just. What Renee did wasn't entirely cold-blooded. I've had enough time to sit with it that I can say that now. She had convinced herself she was helping. That's the thing about people who want control. The good ones, if you can call them that, have usually also convinced themselves it's love. The problem is that love and control feel identical from the inside of the person doing it. From the outside, from where I was sitting, they feel very different. I think about the chain of choices that led to that Saturday morning. I let my grief make me smaller than I was. I accepted Renee's calls and her groceries and her concern without noticing when the concern started coming with conditions. Each time I didn't push back, I made the next push a little easier for her. That's how it works. Not a single dramatic moment, but a slow accumulation of small surrenders. I owned my part in that, and then I made a different choice. I called Harriet. I called Joanna. I sat in an attorney's office with a yellow legal pad and I wrote down what I wanted. That one choice, to stop being managed and start managing myself, is what changed everything. Not luck, not chance. A decision made deliberately by me. There's something I want to say to anyone watching this who recognizes something in Ruth's story, because I know some of you do. The moment you feel something is wrong, trust that feeling. You don't need a second opinion on your own instincts. Wisdom isn't something that gets handed to you at a certain age. It's built from paying attention, from the slow work of knowing yourself well enough to recognize when someone else is trying to rewrite you. That work never stops. It shouldn't stop at 67 any more than it should stop at 40. Renee texted me last week. She asked about Teos. I told her the light there was unlike anything I'd ever painted. She said she'd like to see the painting sometime. I said maybe. That's the most honest answer I have right now. Maybe, not never, but on my terms, in my time, when I decide. The safe is back in the closet. The letter is still on the kitchen table. The paintbrushes are packed. I am not waiting for anyone's permission to live the rest of my life well.